Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're jumping into a really insightful conversation about Bitcoin.
Yeah, the source is a discussion from the Joe Rogan Experience featuring Andreas Antonopoulos.
Right. And we're aiming to basically pull out the key ideas here. Think of it like a shortcut to understanding Bitcoin beyond just the price swings.
Looking at the core concepts, the security, what adoption actually looks like on the ground.
Exactly. We want to cut through the noise,
Mhm.
find those valuable nuggets for you.
And it's a great source because it paints Bitcoin as, wow, this potentially revolutionary tech, but one that's still got its awkward phase.
A bit like the early internet, maybe?
Precisely. Lots of potential, but yeah, some rough edges, like the internet back in the dial-up days.
Huh. Yeah, the screeching modem sounds.
Yeah.
We'll definitely circle back to that comparison. But first, let's tackle a big one from Bitcoin's past that comes up. The collapse of Mt. Gox.
Oh, yeah, the infamous Mt. Gox. For a time, that was the place people went to trade Bitcoin.
And the name, it's kind of funny, right? Magic the Gathering Online Exchange.
It really shows you how sort of hobbyist and bootstrapped things were at the start. It began as a site for trading game cards.
Incredible. But the failure itself wasn't small scale at all.
No, not even close. The source talks about estimates ranging from maybe $500 million up to over $800 million worth of Bitcoin vanishing, plus cash missing, too. It was huge.
A massive blow, reputationally at the time. And it fueled a lot of the Bitcoin is dead talk.
It really did. But here's the crucial point the discussion makes, and you really need to grasp this. The Mt. Gox failure wasn't actually a failure of Bitcoin itself.
Right. It wasn't the protocol that broke.
Not at all. The source is really clear on this. It was a totally classic failure of a centralized company, a bank run, essentially, on a poorly run digital currency exchange.
They use a good analogy, don't they?
Yeah, a really helpful one. Think of a traditional bank or an exchange like Mt. Gox as putting everyone's money into one giant bucket.
Okay. All pulled together.
Exactly. And that one company, Mt. Gox in this case, holds the bucket. They control it entirely.
And history tells us what often happens when you centralize that much wealth and control in one place.
It becomes a target. Or it's mismanaged. Or, frankly, sometimes the people in charge just steal it. These aren't new problems. They're ancient risks tied to centralization.
So the issue wasn't Bitcoin's security model.
No, quite the opposite. The failure happened because Mt. Gox took people's Bitcoin out of the decentralized system where users would normally hold their own keys and put it into their own centrally controlled and, as it turned out, badly secured or fraudulent system.
And the source points out, traditional banks fail too. Hundreds sometimes fail globally each year.
Right. And they mention massive frauds like Bernie Madoff's $20 billion Ponzi scheme, which just dwarfs the Mt. Gox losses.
Yet the media frenzy around Mt. Gox felt different somehow, more intense.
Yeah, almost like a focused manhunt, as the source puts it, which you don't always see for, say, traditional white-collar crime, even when the sums are larger. Maybe because it was new tech, it attracted more scrutiny.
Could be. So the specific failure at Gox was them holding everyone's keys in one place.
That was the core of it. Instead of users controlling their own funds with their own keys, which is the whole point of Bitcoin, Mt. Gox took custody. They bypassed the system's inherent security.
So ironically, the Mt. Gox disaster actually highlighted why Bitcoin's decentralized approach is valuable.
Exactly. It was a painful lesson, for sure. But it underscored the idea that if everyone holds their own smaller bucket, there's no single honeypot for thieves or single point of failure for incompetence. It reinforces that idea of not your keys, not your coins.
Trusting yourself over a third party.
Yeah. So moving on from that, the conversation then shifts to something the source finds maybe even more interesting than Bitcoin as just an investment.
Which is?
Its potential as a means of exchange, as actual money you can use.
Ah, right. They talk about velocity, don't they? How quickly money moves.
Traditional systems, banks, credit cards, PayPal, they have layers, fees, delays, intermediaries. It slows things down.
And the example they give isn't huge international wire transfers. It's tiny payments.
Yeah, that's what makes it so compelling. The idea that you could, say, instantly tip someone 10 cents or 25 cents on Twitter or Reddit or wherever, just directly.
Without needing a PayPal account set up or paying a credit card minimum fee that's more than the tip itself.
Exactly. Traditional payment rails just aren't built for that kind of microtransaction. The fees would eat it all up. Bitcoin, because it's peer-to-peer, allows these tiny value transfers directly between people for a usually very small network fee.
which could really change things like how creators get paid online, for example.
Totally new models become possible. Now, naturally, when you talk easing it, people ask.
Taxes, yeah. How does that work?
The source clarifies this. In the US, the IRS treats Bitcoin like property, like a commodity.
Okay, so like stocks or gold.
Pretty much, you track your purchase price, and when you spend or sell it, you figure out the difference in value. That difference is potentially subject to capital gains tax.
Got it. And on the investment side, what's the advice?
Strong advice against trying to day trade it. Seriously.
What was that? Too volatile.
Well, yeah, the volatility is intense, but it's also the psychology. People watch the price jump, get greedy, buy high. Then it drops, they panic, sell low. It's a classic emotional trap.
Buying the hype, selling the fear.
Precisely. Plus, they make the point that while it's volatile, the market's actually pretty big now. Unless you're a whale with, enormous resources, it's really hard for one person to just manipulate the price artificially through trading.
So trying to time the market is likely a losing game for most people.
Very likely, yeah. So the really interesting thing from this perspective isn't just the price ticker, but seeing how people start using it to move value, big or small, without the old gatekeepers.
Okay, so speaking of security and moving beyond just holding your own keys,
Hmm.
the conversation dives into ways to enhance Bitcoin security, right?
Yeah.
Using things like multi-signature wallets.
Yes, multisig. It's a really clever feature that's actually part of the Bitcoin protocol itself. It's not some third-party add-on.
So how does it work, basically?
Well, instead of needing just one key, your private key, your signature to spend funds, a multi-sig wallet requires signatures from multiple keys chosen from a specific group you define beforehand.
Okay, so I could set up a wallet that needs, say, 2 different keys out of a possible 3 to sign off before any Bitcoin can be sent.
Exactly that. You define M of N, so M signatures required out of a total N keys associated with the wallet. And the use cases they discuss are really practical, mapping onto things we already do.
Like for businesses.
Perfect example. A company could have a 2 of 2 multi-sig wallet. Maybe the CEO has one key, the CFO has the other. Both need to sign off to approve any payment. No single person can move funds.
Adds a layer of internal control.
Definitely. Or think about a personal joint account for a couple. Maybe they set it up as 1 of 2. Either partner can sign to spend funds easily.
Makes sense.
Or for something more complex, like a trust fund, you might have a 2 of 3 setup. Maybe the beneficiary holds one key, a trustee holds another, and perhaps a lawyer holds the third. Any 2 of them need to agree to release funds.
Wow, okay. So it builds financial controls right into the Bitcoin address itself.
That's the idea, and one really cool application they talk about is using it for decentralized escrow.
Escrow, like when you're buying something online and want to make sure you get it before the seller gets paid?
Exactly. Instead of relying on eBay or PayPal to hold the money, you could use a 2 of 3 multi-sig wallet.
How would the keys be split?
Simple. 1 key for the buyer, 1 for the seller, and 1 for a neutral third-party arbitrator they both agree on beforehand.
Okay.
So the buyer sends the Bitcoin into this 2 of 3 address. Now the money's locked. Neither the buyer nor the seller can touch it alone because they only have 1 key each, and it needs 2.
Right.
If everything goes smoothly, seller ships the item, buyer receives it, then the buyer and seller both sign the transaction using their keys. That's 2 out of 3, so the funds get released to the seller. Transaction complete.
Okay, but what if there's a problem? Buyer says they never got the item or it's broken.
That's where the third key holder, the arbitrator, steps in. If there's a dispute, buyer and seller present their case to the arbitrator they chose.
Yeah.
The arbitrator decides who's right. If they rule for the buyer, the arbitrator uses their key, combined with the buyer's key, to make the required 2 of 3 signatures and refund the money to the buyer.
And if they rule for the seller?
Then the arbitrator signs with the seller's key, again making 2 of 3, releasing the payment to the seller.
That's actually really clever. It takes the power away from a single big company acting as escrow and creates a potential market for specialized arbitrators. You choose who you trust.
Exactly. It decentralizes dispute resolution. They even mention another multi-sig setup for personal security.
Oh, yeah.
2 of 3 again, but you hold 2 of the keys. Maybe one's on your main computer or phone, and the other is a secure backup somewhere else.
Okay, so I control 2 keys. Who has a third?
A specialized security service that you hire. Now, this service can't spend your money by themselves. They only have 1 key. But what they can do is monitor your transactions.
Like a fraud detection service.
Kind of, yeah. If they see something unusual, like a huge payment going to an address you've never used before, they can withhold their signature. To complete the transaction, you'd need to provide the signature from your second key. They might even contact you, maybe a phone call or a text, to verify, hey, was this really you?
Hmm.
Before they co-sign.
So you get that extra security layer like a bank might offer, but you still ultimately control your funds because you hold two keys and you get to choose your security provider.
Precisely. It shows how you can layer sophisticated security and trust mechanisms onto Bitcoin using these built-in protocol features. It's not just about holding one key and hoping for the best.
This is all really impressive technically, but the conversation doesn't shy away from the fact that using Bitcoin today,
Yeah.
well, it's not always smooth sailing for the average person.
No, definitely not. They're very upfront about that. The terminology can be geeky, as they put it. Wallets can feel clunky. The whole user experience still has plenty of rough edges.
And this leads into that metaphor you mentioned earlier, right? The early internet comparison.
Yeah, it's such a great metaphor. They described the early internet, the World Wide Web in the 90s, as this scrappy, messy android of networks.
Huh. Oh, yeah, that.
Think about it, right? You
Well,
needed dial-up modems making those awful noises. Sometimes you literally had to type in numerical IP addresses. The browsers were basic and crashed all the time.
yeah, it worked, but it wasn't exactly user-friendly unless you were kind of a nerd.
Exactly. And that was contrasted with what they call the controlled structured iPhone of networks that also existed then. Things like CompuServe, AOL, dedicated corporate data lines. They were often simpler to use, walled gardens, but ultimately closed and limited.
And the messy open internet eventually won out.
That's the point. The open, permissionless, sometimes chaotic Wild West of the internet where anyone could build anything ultimately innovated faster. The quality improved, the user experience got better, and it overtook the closed systems.
So the idea is that the same thing is happening now with finance.
That's the parallel they draw. Traditional banking, payment systems, that's the closed, controlled iPhone. Stable, familiar, but maybe slow to change, lots of gatekeepers. Bitcoin and similar technologies are the scrappy, open Android.
Still messy sometimes. Maybe harder to use right now.
But it's a platform for permissionless innovation. Anyone can build on it, which drives progress faster, even if it's occasionally flaky along the way.
And just like the old phone companies maybe resisted the internet, the established financial players resist Bitcoin.
Yeah, they mentioned the example of Apple initially banning Bitcoin wallet apps from the App Store entirely.
Why did they do that?
Well, the source speculates. Maybe fear of risk, damage to their reputation if users lost money. Maybe protecting their own 30% cut on payments within their ecosystem, which Bitcoin bypasses. Maybe even future plans for their own digital currency. Who knows for sure?
Contrasting with Google on Android, which was more open.
Right. But the really optimistic take here is that these rough edges aren't just problems.
They're opportunities.
Yeah. Exactly. Opportunities for entrepreneurs, for developers to build better interfaces, better wallets, better services that hide all that underlying complexity.
Like how we don't type IP addresses anymore, we use domain names like google.com. Someone built that layer.
Precisely. Companies are working right now on making Bitcoin wallets as easy to use as, say, Venmo or PayPal. They mention browser-based wallets using HTML5, making it feel just like interacting with a website. The goal is to make it accessible for everyone, not just techies.
So you don't need to understand blockchain or private keys to just, send some money.
That's the direction it's heading. And there's also a brief mention that maybe the transparency of Bitcoin's public ledger, combined with how fast reputations can be made or broken online in the tech world, might actually encourage more ethical behavior in Bitcoin businesses compared to older, more opaque industries.
Interesting thought. So the path is building user-friendly layers on top, just like happened with the internet.
Seems to be the idea. And connecting this back to the real world, one area where Bitcoin's already having a noticeable impact, partly because of its speed and transparency, is actually in charity and community efforts.
Yeah, there's a really powerful story in the discussion about this.
There is. It concerns that Newsweek article back in the day that claimed to have found Satoshi Nakamoto, Bitcoin's creator. They identified this poor guy, Dorian Nakamoto, who had nothing to do with it.
And they basically doxed him, right? Published his picture where he lived.
Yeah. Put his whole life under a microscope, massive, unwanted attention, potentially dangerous, just really irresponsible.
But the Bitcoin community's reaction was pretty amazing.
It really was. They saw this innocent person who got caught up in the hype and speculation around Bitcoin and was being harmed by it.
That's some rallies.
Instantly, people started donating Bitcoin to help him out from all over the world. They ended up raising, I think the source says, over 47 Bitcoin, which back then was worth something like $15,000, $20,000 in just about a month. And Andreas Antonopoulos, the guest in the source discussion, was actually involved in organizing this collection and personally delivered the funds to Dorian Nakamoto.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and they mentioned there's a video of Mr. Nakamoto's response thanking the community. He was clearly very moved, saying he felt, a connection from every single donation. It really shows how Bitcoin can enable that direct, person-to-person, borderless generosity.
Bypassing bank fees or international transfer delays that might complicate traditional charitable giving.
Exactly. And they give other examples too, like a project in Pensacola, Florida, that used Bitcoin donations to provide something like 60,000 meals for the homeless, and various foundations popping up to help traditional charities accept Bitcoin easily.
And there was one other, maybe less conventional use case mentioned.
Yeah, they touch on how the direct nature of Bitcoin payments can be empowering for people in professions where they might traditionally be exploited by middlemen or pimps, specifically mentioning sex workers.
Allowing them to receive payments directly and keep control over their earnings.
Right. It bypasses those traditional power structures and intermediaries who might otherwise take a huge cut or exert control. It's presented as an example of the technology offering autonomy in unexpected social contexts.
So putting it all together, what this deep dive shows us is Bitcoin as, well, a technology that learned from the Mt. Gox's failure about centralization.
One that has these unique capabilities for tiny transactions, not just big investments.
That's developing more sophisticated security tools like multisig.
That's definitely going through that rough edges phase like the early internet, but that's full of opportunity.
And is already being used for things like direct charity and empowering individuals in surprising ways.
So maybe the thought to leave you with is this. As technologies like Bitcoin start shifting control away from big, centralized institutions, banks, payment companies, maybe even platforms, and put more power directly into the hands of individuals, just think about how that might reshape things. Not just finance, but maybe our ideas about trust, security, and opportunity across the board in the future.
That is definitely something to mull over. Well, this has been our deep dive into a really fascinating discussion on Bitcoin. We hope you found these insights useful.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Please do follow, like, and share this deep dive if you found it valuable. And you can follow What Bitcoin Taught Me on Twitter X, Nostr, Bluesky, Threads, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.